Good day. Today we are going to discuss Chapter 1, Introduction to Web Development. Before we look at the code used to build websites, it is important to consider the different ways in which people access the web and clarify some terminology. This chapter will give you an introduction about web development. By the time you finish this chapter, you will be able to describe the Internet and the World Wide Web. Know the difference between a web page and a website. Identify different categories and purpose of website. Demonstrate understanding of the need for a web server. Discuss web browsers and identify their purpose. Identify which web development software programs you can use to create web pages more easily. What is the Internet? The Internet is a collection of several billion computers connected throughout the world. The Department of Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or ARFA, developed a brief history of the Internet in the 1960s. ARPANET was the first name of the Internet, which began with 4 nodes on it, and sent its first message in 1969. The Internet today has millions of nodes on thousands of networks that connect people worldwide to share resources and information. What is Internet Service Provider, or ISP? The Internet Service Provider is a company with a permanent connection to the Internet backbone. ISPs use high or medium speed data lines to allow individuals and business to link to the backbone for connectivity to the Internet. There are a number of providers in the country that you can choose from, but we will focus on the major players aimed at providing home broadband Internet services to consumers. These are the leading providers in the Philippines. First is PLDT. Then we have Globe, Sky Broadband, Eastern Telecom, and Converge ICT. PLDT as the biggest telecom company in the country. PLDT provides both service reliability and the largest area coverage for their fiber, DSL, or LTE broadband home or business package. Globe, as one of the largest mobile telecom providers in the country, Globe offers home or business internet solutions in a variety of lands suitable for work or leisure. Sky Broadband, it is the leading cable TV provider that also offers broadband cable internet connection, conveniently bundled with their HD cable TV subscription. Eastern Telecom, it offers dedicated internet direct service running on this line technology and also offers DSL internet suitable for small offices or for work from home employees. Converge ICT, it provides home, SME, or enterprise broadband internet based purely on fiber optic connectivity. What is the World Wide Web? The web is a collection of documents called web pages that are, that are shared for the most part by computer users throughout the world. To support multimedia, the web relies on the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP, which is a set of rules for exchanging text, image, sounds, video, and other multimedia files. The linked documents or pages of information on the web are known as web pages. In order to view a web page, user might type a web address into their browser, follow a link from another site, or use a bookmark. A web page is a document commonly written in HTML that is accessible through the internet or other network using a web browser. What is the website? A website is a collection of related web pages that are normally stored on a single web server computer. Web servers are special computers that are constantly connected to the internet and are optimized to send web pages out to people who request them. To create a website, you need these things. Number one is a text editor. Next is an upload or a publishing tool. Number three is a web hosting service. And last is a browser. A text editor. There are many different text editors with varying degrees of functionality. Microsoft Notepad is free and provides no special web functionality. To use it, the web developer simply enters text and the text appears as is. You might also like to download a free editor called Notepad++ from notepad++.org. You can also use Sublime Text. Sublime Text is a sophisticated text editor for code, markup, and prose. Although it is possible to use a plain text editor such as Notepad, most web developers use a fancier type of text editor, a web authoring tool. Different web authoring tools have different features that are intended to make the web development process easier. At a minimum, web authoring tools are able to suggest valid code after the user has typed part of a command. This is done by showing a pop-up to the user that suggests valid code that could complete the command currently being entered. This autocomplete mechanism is often called IntelliSense and sometimes called picklist. Another feature common to all web authoring tools is WYSIWYG, pronounced as WYSIWYG. It stands for What You See is What You Get. What you see is what you get means that you are editing your text. You can see what your text will look like after it's eventually uploaded to a website. Next is web page upload. After you enter your web page text on your local computer with your favorite IDE, you probably want to publish it. Publishing means that you upload your web page to a web server computer so other users can access it on the web. Some IDEs like Dreamweaver provide built-in uploading capabilities, but others IDE like Visual Studio do not. For IDEs that do not provide built-in uploading capabilities, you need to use a separate file uploading tool. Next is web hosting service. For a file upload tool such as WinSCP to work, you need to have a web server computer on which to store the uploaded files. For the uploaded files to be accessible as web page on the web, your web server computers need to have a web hosting service in place. The web developer usually doesn't have to worry about the web hosting service software. If the web developer is part of a medium to large size organization, then the organization's information technology department will install and maintain the web hosting service. On the other hand, if the web developer is part of a very small organization or not part of an organization at all, the developer will need to set up the web hosting service or rely on a generic web hosting company. Example is GoDaddy.com to do so. Regardless of who's in charge of the web hosting service, all web hosting services need to have a mechanism for receiving uploaded files from file upload tool. Typically, that mechanism is an FTP or File Transfer Protocol server, which is a program that runs on the web server computer. Last is a browser. A browser is a piece of software that enables a user to retrieve and view a web page. According to StatCounter.com, the most popular browser for computers are Google Chrome. Next is Microsoft browser, such as Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer, and Mozilla too. Next is Mozilla Firefox, and the number one is Google Chrome. Other browsers are Safari for Mac device, Opera and Android's default browser. Safari and Android are particularly popular with mobile device. Parts of a URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, which is another term for the address of a website or, or resource on it. The 9 parts of a URL are the protocol: subdomain, domain name, top-level domain, port, path, query, parameters, and fragment. The protocol. The protocol is the first part of URL. It represents a set of rules that decide how files are displayed, formatted, or transferred across the web. For example, when an address is entered in the browser, the HTTP part, which stands for Hypertransfer Protocol, tells, tells it that the page is to be displayed in Hypertext Transfer Format, or HTML. Other protocols include the File Transfer Protocol, or FTP, for transferring file, and Single Mail Transfer Protocol, or SMTP, for use by mail servers to send email. By the way, HTTPS is the secure version of HTTP. Next is the subdomain. The most common subdomain is www, which is general symbol for any resource on the web. However, it is common to specify the type of resource that the browser should deliver. In the case of URL above, we can see that the type of data is being requested from the server is for videos. Next is the domain name. Domain name is the actual name of the website. The Medium in the Medium.com or Google in the Google.com. Domain name must be a unique as they literally determine the address of a website. In the early days of the web, you actually had to type the IP address to go to a particular site. Later on, words were used instead as they were easier to remember. Next, the top-level domain, or TLD. It's also known as the domain extension. It is the .com that appears at the end of simple website address like bing.com. This part specifies what kind of content will be on the website.com. Was primarily for commercial sites, whereas .org is usually used to indicate that the website is done for an organization. When it comes to buying domain, the domain extension can decide how expensive it is. For instance, .vegas tends to be more expensive than .com or .net. In the example above, the .co.uk is the top-level domain. Next, the port. The port is reserved channel used for a specific purpose. Different types of server will use different ports. Web server ports differ from file server ports. For instance, the default port for standard HTTP server is 80, whereas secure websites use HTTP, which requires port number 443. Browsers are required to connect to a particular port in order to access the resources on that server. Next, the path. The path used to show which directory on server stores the resources that are being requested. Nowadays, the path that appears in most URL these days don't possibly reflect the directory structure on the server. Instead, paths are used to identify a route in navigational structure of the website. Next is the query. The query. Many times when searching on a website or search engine, you'll see a question mark in the URL of the page that display your result. Next is parameter. Parameter are the actual values being queried when a search is performed. The parameter can be search term, a number, an encrypted value, or any other data that can be found on the database. Last is the fragment. Fragment is an optional component of a web address that is preceded by a hash and that directs to a secondary resources which can a portion of page like a footer or sidebar. Next topic is web development lifecycle. The web development lifecycle is a process that can be used for developing web pages at any level of complexity. The web development lifecycle includes the following phases: planning, analysis, design, and development, testing, and implementation and maintenance. Phase 1, website planning, which is the first phase of the web development cycle, involves identifying the goals or purpose of the website. The first step in the website planning phase to answer the question, what is the purpose of this website? Phase 2. During the analysis phase, you can make decisions about the website content and functionality to help define the appropriate website content and functionality. You should first identify the tasks that users need to perform. Phase 3. After determining the purpose of the website and defining the content and functionality, you need to consider the website design. Some key considerations in designing a website are defining how to organize web page content, selecting appropriate web structure, determining how to use media, addressing accessibility issues, and designing pages for an international audience. Phase 4. Websites should be tested at various stages of the web design and development process. Testing should be comprehensive and include a review of web page content, functionality, and usability. So that's the end of chapter 1. Thank you for listening.